The merchant vessel Relentless Dawn hung suspended in the void between dimensions, its hull scarred by 3 weeks of hit-and-run tactics that had kept the hegemony fleet at bay. Captain Valdra's Corin pressed her palm against the observation. Decks reinforced glass, watching the swirling nebula of the HFY Gate complex stretch endlessly in all directions. Status report. Next, she called to her first officer, a grizzled veteran whose cybernetic eye glowed amber in the dim emergency lighting. Fusion drive is operating at 30% capacity. Hull breach is sealed. But we've lost 2/3 of our cargo bay to decompression. The good news? Next, Valen's weathered face cracked into a grim smile. We still have the data cores. Valdris nodded, her fingers unconsciously tracing the Earth Navy insignia tattooed on her forearm, a memento from her military days before she'd chosen the merchant marine life. The Relentless Dawn was officially a trade vessel, but like most human ships venturing into the outer sectors, it carried enough firepower to make pirates think twice. Unfortunately, the hegemony wasn't pirates. Captain, Communications Officer. Lara Thorne's voice cracked with exhaustion. I'm picking up another transmission from the hegemony fleet. They're offering terms again. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Valdris had heard the terms before. Surrender the ship, submit to hegemony custody, and face trial for unlawful intrusion into sovereign space. The fact that the HFY Gate complex had been free passage for over 2 centuries apparently meant nothing to the crystalline beings who recently claimed it as their territory. How many ships? Valdris asked. Sensors show 43 vessels. In the immediate vicinity, reported Tactical Officer Dex Malacker, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. But Captain, I'm reading something else. The gate network, it's not behaving normally. Valdris moved to the tactical station, studying the readings. The HFY complex was unique and naturally occurring phenomenon that created stable wormholes between star systems. Dozens of gates orbited the central mass, each one leading to different sectors of the galaxy. It was humanity's primary route for deep space exploration and trade. Explain, she ordered. The hegemony's been installing some kind of dampening field generators around each gate. They're not just claiming the complex, they're trying to control access to it. Dex's expression darkened. If they succeed, they'll have a chokehold on half the galaxy's trade routes. The implications hit Valdris like a physical blow. The hegemony had been expanding aggressively for the past decade, but this was different. This wasn't just territorial expansion, it was economic warfare on a galactic scale. Ma'am, Lara interrupted, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the hegemony fleet. They're moving to surround us. Valdris straightened, her merchant captain's facade falling away to reveal the steel beneath. All hands, battle stations. Next, I want a full diagnostic on our weapon systems. Dex, map every piece of debris in this sector. We're going to need cover. Captain, Lara's voice was barely a whisper. They're hailing us again. Should I put them through? The main screen flickered to life, showing the angular, crystalline form of a hegemony archon. Its voice resonated through the bridge like breaking glass. Human vessel, you have violated hegemony sovereignty. Surrender immediately or face consequences. Valdris stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. This is Captain Valdris Corin of the independent merchant vessel Relentless Dawn. The HFY complex is free space under the Galactic Commerce Accords. You have no authority here. The archon's form seemed to shimmer with what might have been amusement. The Accords are obsolete. The hegemony claims this. Space by right of superior force. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed. Then you'll have to destroy us, Valdris replied. Cutting the transmission, the bridge erupted in controlled chaos, as her crew prepared for what they all knew was a hopeless fight. 43 ships against 1 damaged merchant vessel. The odds were impossible. But as Valdris watched the hegemony fleet begin its final approach, she smiled. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Humans had a saying, you can trap a wolf, but you better kill it quick. The Relentless Dawn might die here, but the data cores in her hold contained something that would change everything. The hegemony had just made the mistake of cornering a human ship. Now they were about to learn why that was never a good idea. The first wave of hegemony fighters came in fast and low, their crystalline hulls refracting the nebula's light into deadly rainbows. Valdris gripped the command chair as the Relentless Dawn shuddered under the opening barrage. Shields at 60%, Dex reported, his hands flying over the tactical console. They're targeting our communications array. Not happening, Valdris snarled. Next, emergency power to the transmitter. Lara, I want a type beam to Earth command. Highest priority. The ship lurched as a hegemony pulse cannon found its mark. Sparks showered from an overloaded conduit, and the acrid smell of burning. Electronics filled the bridge. Captain, I can't get a clear signal through the gate network, Lara called out, her voice tight with concentration. The hegemony's dampening fields are interfering with standard communication protocols. Then we do it the hard way, Valdris decided. Dex, load data torpedoes with our sensor logs and the hegemony fleet disposition. Fire them through every gate in the complex. Man, that's going to drain our remaining power reserves. Do it. The relentless Dawn shook us. Her torpedo tubes opened fire, sending data-laden projectiles through a dozen different gates. Each torpedo carried a compressed burst transmission that would activate. Once it reached its destination, a message that would spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The hegemony fleet responded immediately. What had been a cautious probing attack became a coordinated assault as the aliens realized what the humans were doing. Incoming missiles. Bearing 27 Mark IV, Dex announced. Multiple contacts. Vector changing to intercept. Evasive maneuvers, Valdris ordered. Use the gate superstructure for cover. Next, threw the ship into a spiraling dive that would have liquefied any organic crew. Not protected by inertial dampeners, the relentless Dawn wove between the massive support pylons of the nearest gate, using the ancient alien architecture as a shield against the hegemony's assault. They're boxing us in, Dex warned as enemy ships moved to cut off their escape routes. 12 fighters on our 6, 3 heavy cruisers moving to flank. Valdris watched the tactical display with predatory intensity. The hegemony was playing it safe, using their numerical advantage to systematically eliminate the human ship's options. It was a sound strategy, conservative. Lara, are you picking up any response from our data torpedoes? Negative, Captain. They'll need at least 6 hours to reach the nearest inhabited systems. 6 hours. Valdris smiled grimly. They just had to survive for 6 hours. The relentless Dawn bucked as another barrage struck home. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge as secondary systems began failing. The ship's merchant disguise was wearing thin, no simple cargo. How it could have survived this long against a hegemony fleet? Captain, Nex's voice was grim. I'm reading massive energy buildups from the hegemony command ship. They're preparing something big. Valdris studied the tactical display. The hegemony Archon's flagship was a crystalline monstrosity the size of a small moon, its faceted surface bristling with weapons that could crack planets. If it brought its main guns to bear, all stop, she ordered suddenly. Ma'am, Nex's hands hesitated over the controls. You heard me. Full stop. Cut engines. Minimal power to life support. The bridge fell silent except for the distant rumble of enemy engines. On the main screen, the hegemony fleet slowed, their attack formations wavering as they tried to understand what the humans were doing. They're hailing us, Lara reported. Put them through. The Archon's crystalline form filled the screen, its voice like grinding stone. Your vessel has ceased movement. Do you surrender? Valdris stood, her hands clasped behind her back. I'm Captain Valdris Korn of the Earth Colonial Navy, retired. This is my ship, my crew, and my choice to make. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. I choose to tell you something important. The hegemony commander's form flickered with what might have been curiosity. Speak. You've made a mistake, Valdris said calmly. You attacked a human ship in what you claim is your territory. You've taken our cargo, threatened our crew, and attempted to impose your will through force. Her smile was ice cold. But you haven't killed us yet. That oversight will be corrected. No, Valdris shook her head. It won't, because in approximately 5 hours and 4 to 7 minutes, every human fleet in the galaxy is going to receive our transmission. They're going to learn that the hegemony has claimed the Kethra complex. They're going to see the sensor logs of your attack on a civilian vessel. The Archon's form seemed to solidify, becoming more angular and threatening. You believe your species will wage war over a single ship? Valdris's laugh was harsh and bitter. You clearly don't understand humans. We don't wage war over a single ship. Her eyes hardened. We wage war over the principle that no one gets to trap our people and walk away. The transmission cut out, and the hegemony fleet resumed its attack with renewed viciousness. But Valdris could see the change in their formation. They were no longer trying to capture the relentless Dawn. They were trying to destroy it before it could send any more messages. Too late. The hegemony's assault intensified as the relentless dawn limped through the debris field. Surrounding the 7th gate, Valdez counted 14 breaches in the outer hull, 3 dead crew members, and a fusion reactor that was holding together through sheer stubbornness and emergency patches. Engineering a bridge, crackled Chief Engineer Kato Cern's voice through the intercom. Captain, we're running on fumes down here. The primary power coupling is fried, and I've got coolant leaks in sections for through 7. How long can you keep her running? Valdez asked, watching another wave of hegemony fighters sweep in from the port side. Maybe 2 hours, maybe less if they keep hitting us like this. Valdez closed her eyes, calculating. 3 hours until the first human fleets could respond to their distress signal. 2 hours of power remaining. The mathematics were unforgiving. Dex, what's our ammunition status? 37% on the main guns, 60% on point defense. We've got maybe a dozen missiles left. Dex paused, his expression grim. Captain, I'm reading energy signatures from the hegemony fleet. They're charging their main guns. Through the bridge's reinforced windows, Valdez could see the enemy flagship's crystalline surface beginning to glow with an ominous light. The hegemony had apparently decided that subtlety was no longer required. Next, I need everything you can give me from the engines. We're going to make a run for the 9th gate. The 9th gate. Next, a cybernetic outward as he processed the tactical data. Captain, that's a dead end. The gate on the other side leads to the scorch zone, nothing but radiation and asteroid fields. Exactly, Valdez smiled grimly. They won't expect us to run toward a dead end. The relentless dawn pivoted on her axis, her damaged engines flaring to life with a roar that shook the entire ship. The sudden acceleration caught the hegemony fleet off guard, and for a moment, the humans had a clear path to the 9th gate. But only for a moment. Multiple contacts, closing fast. Dex reported, they're trying to cut us off. Valdez watched the tactical display as enemy ships converged on their position. The hegemony was committing everything to stop them, which meant they were terrified of something. Lara, are you detecting any responses to our earlier transmissions? Negative, Captain. Still too early. A massive explosion bloomed off the starboard bow as a hegemony missile found its mark. The relentless dawn shuddered, her hull plates buckling. Under the impact, emergency klaxons wailed as atmosphere vented from a dozen new breaches. Hull integrity at 47%. Next reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. We're not going to make it to the gate. Valdez studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The hegemony fleet was spread in a perfect intercept formation, their crossfire zones overlapping to create an impenetrable wall of destruction. Any course toward the 9th gate would take them directly through the killing field, unless Dex. What's the blast radius on our remaining missiles if we detonate them simultaneously? Approximately 12 kilometers, assuming we overload the warheads. But Captain, that would leave us completely defenseless. Not defenseless, Valdez corrected. Desperate. There's a difference. She turned to Nix. I want you to plot a course that takes us through the densest part of their formation. Maximum acceleration, straight line. Mom, that's suicide. No. Valdez's voice was ice cold. That's human. The relentless dawn changed course, her engine screaming as she dove directly into the heart of the hegemony fleet. Enemy ships scattered in confusion as the apparently suicidal human vessel charged toward their formation. Launch all. The space around the relentless dawn erupted in a chain of explosions that turned the void into a temporary star. Hegemony's ships vanished in the inferno, their crystalline hulls shattering under the combined force of the detonations. But the relentless dawn was at the center of the blast. The ship bucked and rolled as the shock wave hit, throwing everyone on the bridge against their restraints. Valdez tasted blood as her head snapped back, and she could hear the groaning of stress metal throughout the ship. Damage report. She called out as the emergency lighting flickered back to life. We're alive. Next reported with something approaching. Amazement. Barely. The blast cleared a path through their formation. But we're down to emergency power only. The gate. 2 minutes at current speed. Valdez nodded, watching the tactical display as the remaining hegemony ships regrouped. They had lost at least a third of their fleet to her desperate gambit, but they were still outnumbered 20-1. Captain, Lara's voice was tight with excitement. I'm picking up something. Long-range sensors are detecting. Oh my God. What is it? Hyperspace signatures? Lots of them. They're coming through the primary gates. Valdris felt her heart skip a beat. Human ships. Affirmative. I count, Jesus, Captain. I count over 100 vessels, and they're all flying Earth banners. The hegemony had made their second mistake. They'd assumed that trapping one human ship would be the end of it. They were about to learn what happened when you cornered someone who had 200 friends. The first human battleship to emerge from the primary gate was the inexorable Tide, a kilometer-long dreadnought whose hull bristled with enough firepower to level a small moon. Admiral Jasper Holloway's voice crackled through the comm system. Calm and professional despite the chaos surrounding them, relentless dawn. This is Admiral Holloway. We received your data burst. Proceed to Rally Point Charlie and await escort. Valdris almost laughed. Rally Point Charlie was military code for get the hell out of the way while we handle this. Negative, Admiral. We're not running anywhere. Captain Corrin, your ship is in no condition to participate in combat operations. Stand down. With respect, sir. This is still my fight. There was a pause before Holloway's voice returned, tinged with what might have been amusement. Very well, Captain, but stay out of our firing lanes. The relentless dawn limped toward the outer edge of the battlefield. As more human ships poured through the gates, Valdris watched in grim satisfaction as the hegemony fleet found itself facing odds that had shifted dramatically in the past 30 minutes. Dex, give me a tactical overview, she ordered. 237 human vessels confirmed. Mix of battle groups from the 2nd Fleet, 4th Fleet, and Jesus, Captain, that's the Retribution coming through Gate 5. Valdris whistled low. The Retribution was Admiral Kira Voss's flagship, a massive carrier that had been instrumental in the Proxima campaigns. If Voss was here personally, it meant Earth Command was taking this very seriously indeed. Hegemony Fleet is regrouping. Dex continued. They pulled back to defensive positions around their command ship. I count 41 vessels remaining. The odds had reversed, but Valdris knew better than to underestimate the hegemony. Their ships were individually more powerful than human vessels, and their defensive positions around the gate complex gave them significant advantages. All human vessels. Admiral Holloway's voice echoed across the comm channels. This is Admiral Holloway assuming tactical command. The hegemony has declared the Kethra complex to be sovereign territory and has attacked civilian shipping. This aggression will not be tolerated. The hegemony Archon's response came immediately, its crystalline voice distorted by the quantum interference of the gate complex. Human fleet, you are trespassing in hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Voss's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Hegemony forces. This is Admiral Kira Voss of the Earth Naval Command. You attacked one of our ships. That was a mistake. You trapped our people in your little territorial grab. That was a bigger mistake. Her voice turned ice cold. But your biggest mistake was assuming we'd let you get away with it. The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their ships spreading out to minimize the effectiveness of the hegemony's defensive positions. The inexorable Tide took point, her massive railgun swiveling to track enemy targets. All ships, weapons free. Holloway commanded. Show them what happens when you corner a human. The space around the Kethra complex erupted in violence as 200 human ships opened fire. Simultaneously, the coordinated barrage was overwhelming. Streams of coherent energy, guided missiles, and kinetic projectiles converged on the hegemony positions with devastating effect. The first wave of human fire struck the hegemony fleet like a tsunami. Crystalline hulls shattered under the impact of railgun slugs, and enemy ships vanished in brilliant explosions as their power cores overloaded. The aliens' defensive formation wavered as they struggled to respond to the sheer volume of incoming fire. But the hegemony wasn't defenseless. Their return fire was devastating, coherent energy beams that could slice through human armor like paper, and exotic weapons that seemed to warp space itself. The cruiser Defiant took a direct hit and simply ceased to exist, leaving only expanding debris and the screams of her crew on the emergency channels. Multiple human casualties. Dex reported, his voice tight. I count 7 ships destroyed, 14 heavily damaged. Valdris watched the tactical display as the battle developed. The human fleet had the advantage of numbers, but the hegemony's superior firepower was beginning to tell. This was going to be a bloodbath. Captain, Lyra called out. I'm detecting something strange. The hegemony command ship is powering up. Some kind of Weapon, energy signature unlike anything I've seen. Valdres felt cold dread settle in her stomach. Specifications, unknown. But Captain, the power requirements are enormous. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big. On the main screen, the Hegemony flagship began to glow with an eerie light that seemed to bend reality around it. Other enemy ships moved to protect the massive vessel, forming a defensive screen that bristled with weapons, all human ships. Admiral Voss's voice rang out across the comm channels. Priority target is the Hegemony command vessel. Concentrate all fire. The human fleet responded immediately, their ships converging on the enemy flagship, but the Hegemony defensive screen held, absorbing the punishment while their mysterious weapon continued to charge. Incoming transmission. From the Hegemony command ship, Lyra reported, "Put it through." The Archon's crystalline form appeared on the screen, its voice resonating with what sounded like triumph. "Humans, you have sealed your fate. Witness the power of the Hegemony." The flagship's weapon fired, the beam that erupted from the Hegemony command ship was unlike anything in human experience, a lance of pure energy that seemed to tear reality itself. It struck the battleship Sovereign's pride dead center, and the massive vessel simply unraveled. Valdres watched in horror as the dreadnought came apart at the molecular level, its atoms scattered across space in a cloud of glowing particles. 2,000 crew members died in an instant, their existence erased as if they had never. The human fleet recoiled from the devastating display, their formation wavering as admirals tried to process what they just witnessed. The Hegemony had just demonstrated the ability to erase ships from existence, but humans had always been stubborn. "Admiral," Voss's voice cut through the shocked silence. "All ships, this is Admiral Voss. I don't care what kind of weapon that is. They killed our people. They trapped our ship, and now they're threatening our galaxy." Her voice hardened to steel. "No quarter, no mercy. Make them pay for every drop of human blood." The human fleet surged forward with renewed fury, their ships diving into the Hegemony formation with reckless abandon. The measured tactics of the opening engagement gave way to something far more primitive, the raw, primal fury of a species that had been pushed afar. The Hegemony was about to learn that there was nothing more dangerous than angry humans with nothing left to lose. The human fleet tore into the Hegemony formation with the fury of a wounded animal. Admiral Voss's carrier group led the charge, her fighters swarming around the enemy flagship like angry wasps. The Retribution herself bore down on the Hegemony command ship, her massive guns hammering at the crystalline behemoth shields. "Target the weapon arrays," Voss commanded over the fleet channel. "I want that reality killer offline." The Hegemony responded with devastating precision. Their exotic weapons carved through human formations, and more ships died in brilliant flashes of light. The destroyer Havoc took a direct hit from a gravity disruptor and imploded, crushing her crew into a sphere of twisted metal barely 10 meters across. Casualty report. Admiral Holloway's voice was grim as he coordinated the battle from the inexorable tide. 14 ships destroyed, 28 heavily damaged. "We're losing ships faster than we can replace them," but the human assault was having an effect. Hegemony vessels were dying too, their crystalline hulls shattering under the combined firepower of the human fleet. The enemy defensive screen was wavering, and several alien ships were pulling back with visible damage. "Relentless Dawn," Admiral Voss's voice crackled through the calm. "Your ship carries detailed sensor data on Hegemony technology. We need tactical analysis." Valdres studied the tactical display, her merchant captain's mind calculating angles and possibilities. "Admiral, their shields are regenerative, but they have a recharge cycle. Approximately 47 seconds between peaks. Confirmed. All ships, coordinate your fire. Wait for the shield cycle, then pour everything into them." The human fleet reformed into precise attack formations, their timing synchronized with mechanical precision. When the Hegemony shields flickered, 200 ships opened fire as one. The combined barrage was devastating. 3 Hegemony cruisers exploded simultaneously, their death throes lighting up the void. The enemy flagship staggered under the assault, its crystalline surface cracking as human weapons found their mark. But the Hegemony's ultimate weapon was charging for another shot. Energy spiked from the command ship, Dex reported, "They're targeting the Retribution." Admiral Voss's voice was calm as death itself. "All ships, maintain attack pattern. Do not break off." "Admiral," her tactical officer's voice was urgent, "that weapon will destroy us. Then we make sure it can only fire once. The Retribution continued her attack run, her massive bulk absorbing punishment that would have vaporized smaller vessels. Her fighter squadron strafed the Hegemony flagship, their weapons pecking at the alien vessel's weakened shields. The reality killer fired again. The beam struck the Retribution amidships, and for a moment, it seemed like the massive carrier would suffer the same fate as the Sovereign's Pride, but Admiral Voss had been ready. The moment the weapon fired, she ordered an ejection of the ship's antimatter reserves. The explosion was visible from the other side of the galaxy. The Retribution died, but she took the Hegemony weapon with her, the feedback from the antimatter. Detonation overloaded the enemy flagship's power grid, and the reality killer went offline in a shower of sparks and crystalline fragments. Retribution destroyed, Holloway reported, his voice heavy with grief. Admiral Voss is gone. The human fleet paused for a moment, honoring their fallen commander. Then they resumed their attack with even greater fury. This is Admiral Holloway, assuming overall command. His voice rang out over the comm channels. Admiral Voss died to take out their ultimate weapon. We're not going to let her sacrifice be in vain. The battle shifted again as the human fleet pressed their advantage. Without their reality killer, the Hegemony was reduced to conventional weapons still formidable, but no longer capable of erasing ships from existence. The cruiser Vindictive led a squadron of destroyers in a devastating attack run against the Hegemony left flank. Her captain, an aggressive young officer named Tobias Wren, pushed his ship beyond safe limits as he closed with the enemy. All weapons, continuous fire. Wren ordered, ramming speed. The Vindictive plowed through the Hegemony formation, her guns blazing at point-blank range. Enemy ships exploded around her as she carved a path of destruction through their ranks. But the crystalline aliens were not passive targets. Their return fire was deadly accurate. The Vindictive shuddered as enemy weapons found their mark. Her hull cracked, atmosphere vented, and her crew died at their posts. But Captain Wren kept his ship moving forward, his guns never ceasing their deadly work. Hull breach on decks for through 7. Negative. Wren's voice was steady despite the chaos around him. We're not done here. The Vindictive rammed into a Hegemony heavy cruiser, her reinforced bow crushing through the alien vessel's crystalline hull. Both ships died in the collision, their reactors overloading in a brilliant explosion that consumed everything within a 50-kilometer radius. Jesus. Next whispered from the bridge of the Relentless Dawn. They're not just fighting, they're sacrificing themselves. Valdres nodded grimly. That's what we do. We pay the price. The battle raged for another hour, ships dying on both sides as the two fleets tore each other apart. The space around the Kethera complex became a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered crystal, littered with the debris of hundreds of vessels. But gradually, inevitably, the human numbers began to tell. The Hegemony fleet was down to less than 20 ships, while the humans still had over 100 vessels in fighting condition. Hegemony flagship is falling back, Dex reported. They're trying to disengage. Admiral Holloway's voice was cold as winter. All ships pursue and destroy. No survivors. The human fleet surged forward like a pack of wolves, their ships converging on the fleeing Hegemony vessels. It was no longer a battle, it was a slaughter. The Hegemony Archon's voice crackled through the calm one final time, its crystalline tones filled with something that might have been fear. Humans, we underestimated your brutality. No, Admiral, Holloway replied, his voice carrying the weight of every human who had died in the battle. You underestimated our love. The Hegemony flagship died in a nova of light and crystal fragments, taking the Archon and his crew with it. The remaining enemy ships followed within minutes, their hulls torn apart by human weapons. The Battle of Kethera was over. The gates belonged to humanity once again. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. The silence that followed the destruction of the Hegemony fleet was broken only by the whispered damage reports crackling through the comm channels. Admiral Holloway stood on the bridge of the inexorable tide, surveying the aftermath of the most brutal battle in human history. Final casualty count, he requested, his voice heavy with exhaustion. 6 to 7 ships destroyed, 43 heavily damaged. His tactical officer reported. Confirmed dead, 38,712. Missing, 4,209. Over 40,000 human lives. The number hung in the air like a physical weight, pressing down on everyone who heard it. The victory felt hollow, pyrrhic, purchased with blood that could never be replaced. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command. They're asking for confirmation of the hegemony's ultimate weapon. HFY nodded grimly. The reality killer would change everything. If the hegemony had more of those weapons, if other species possessed similar technology, then humanity's expansion into the galaxy would face challenges they'd never imagined. Send them everything we have, he ordered. Full sensor logs, tactical analysis, casualty reports. Command needs to know what we're dealing with, Admiral. Another voice called out, we're detecting survivors in the debris field. Hegemony life pods. HFY paused, his hand hovering over the comm controls. By the rules of war, they were obligated to rescue survivors. But these weren't human survivors, these were the beings who had just demonstrated the ability to erase ships from existence. All ships, begin search and rescue operations. He ordered finally. Survivors are to be taken into custody for intelligence debriefing. The human fleet spread out through the debris field, their ships carefully navigating between the twisted remains of both fleets. It was grim work. Most of the wreckage was too badly damaged to contain survivors, and the few life pods they found often contained only crystalline fragments that had once been living beings. But some of the hegemony had survived, and they were taken aboard human vessels under heavy guard. Captain Corrin, Admiral HFY's voice addressed the relentless Dawn directly. I want to thank you. Your actions here made this victory possible. Valdris looked around her damaged bridge at the faces of her crew who had somehow survived the impossible. We just did our job, Admiral. Your job was to run cargo between star systems. What you did was something else entirely. HFY's voice softened. Earth Command will want to debrief you, but I want you to know every human in this fleet owes you their lives. Not every human, Valdris replied quietly, thinking of the thousands who had died in the battle, just the ones who are still alive. As the human fleet began the long process of securing the HFY complex, reports began flowing in from across the galaxy. The data torpedoes that the relentless Dawn had fired through the gates had reached their destinations, and the response was overwhelming. Admiral, the communications officer reported, we're receiving status reports from sector commanders across human space. Every major fleet is mobilizing. The Colonial Authority has declared a state of emergency. Earth Command is implementing War Protocol 7. War Protocol 7. Valdris felt a chill run down her spine. She'd heard about it during her naval service, but it had never been used. It was the protocol for species-level existential threats, the kind of situation where humanity's survival was at stake. Aren't they right? Nyx asked, gesturing toward the debris field that had once been the hegemony fleet. A species that can erase matter from existence just tried to control the galaxy's primary trade routes. If we hadn't stopped them here, he didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone on the bridge understood the implications. The HFY complex was more than just a strategic location, it was the keystone that held galactic civilization together, controlled the gates, and you controlled everything. Admiral, a new voice crackled through the comm system. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Iron Will. We've completed our sweep of the 8th gate. You need to see this. What have you found? Captain, evidence of hegemony construction projects. They weren't just installing dampening fields, they were building something big. Admiral HFY's expression darkened. Transmit your findings to all ships. If the hegemony was planning something beyond territorial control, sir. The tactical officer interrupted. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures, a known configuration approaching from the galactic rim. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed the implications. The galactic rim was largely unexplored territory, home to species that had little contact with the established civilizations of the core worlds. How many ships? HFY asked. Difficult to determine. The sensor readings are strange, unlike anything in our databases. Valdris felt her blood turn to ice. The hegemony had been aggressive, expansionist, and deadly, but they had also been familiar in known quantity with recognizable technology and tactics. Whatever was coming from the rim was an unknown factor, arriving in the aftermath of the most devastating battle in human history. All ships. Admiral HFY's voice rang out across the fleet channels. Maintain defensive positions around the gate complex. Unknown contacts approaching. Assume hostile intent until proven otherwise. The human fleet. battered and bloodied from their victory over the hegemony, prepared to face a new threat. Ships that had barely survived one battle readied themselves for another, their crews pushing past exhaustion through sheer determination. "Captain," Lyra's voice was tight with concern. "I'm picking up transmissions from the unknown contacts. The languages. It's not in any database. But the tone, what about it? It sounds like morning songs." The first of the unknown ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, and Valdris felt her breath catch. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest human dreadnought. But it wasn't built for war. Its organic curves and flowing lines spoke of artistry rather than aggression. Beauty instead of brutality. More ships followed, dozens of them, each one unique in design, but sharing the same aesthetic of elegant functionality. They moved with the fluid grace of living things, their hulls shimmering with colors that had no names in human language. "They're beautiful." Next whispered, "Admiral." Captain Vasquez's voice was urgent. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the unknown fleet, but they're not weapons there. I think they're memorials." As the alien fleet approached, it became clear that Captain Vasquez was right. The ships weren't warships, they were monuments. Floating works of art that honored something or someone with intricate carvings, and holographic displays that told stories in languages no human could understand. "Incoming transmission," Lyra reported. They're speaking English. Badly, but it's definitely English." "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a being that defied easy description. It was tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift between colors like aurora, and eyes that held depths of sadness that no human could fully comprehend. "Human fleet." The being's voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We are Kithara. We come to mourn." Admiral Halloway stepped forward. "I am Admiral Jasper Halloway of the Earth Naval Command. Who do you mourn?" "The Guardians, the hegemony. Your enemies were our children." The words hit the human fleet like a physical blow. The hegemony, the aggressive, expansionist species that had just tried to control the galaxy's trade routes, had been someone's children. The crystalline beings who had demonstrated the power to erase matter from existence had been loved, mourned, remembered. "We did not know," Admiral Halloway said quietly. "They attacked our people, trapped our ships. We defended ourselves. We know," the Kithara replied. "We watched. We understand." The alien being gestured, and the main screen filled with images of the hegemony as they had once been. Not conquerors, but caretakers, tending to the gate complex with the devotion of gardeners nurturing a prize flower. They had been the guardians of galactic civilization, ensuring safe passage for all species. "What happened to them?" Valdris asked, her merchant captain's curiosity overriding her exhaustion. "Fear," the Kithara said simply. "They saw expansion of younger races, feared loss of purpose, became controllers instead of guardians." The tragic irony was overwhelming. The hegemony had attacked human shipping not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to maintain their role as guardians of the gates. They had become the very thing they had originally existed to prevent a barrier to free passage. "Through the galaxy, we come," the Kithara continued, "to take our children home, to sing them, to rest, but also to choose new guardians." "Admiral." Halloway felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. "You want us to become the guardians of the gate complex." Humans fought for principle, not conquest, not control, for freedom, for love of trapped ship. The Kithara's eyes seemed to look directly into Halloway's soul. "You understand purpose of gates. Will you guard them as our children should have?" The question hung in the space between species, between civilizations, between the old galaxy and the new. The human fleet had come here to rescue one trapped ship, and now they were being offered stewardship of the most important strategic location in known space. "We will," Admiral Halloway said without hesitation. "We will guard the gates. We will ensure safe passage for all species, and we will remember what happened here, so that it never happens again." The Kithara's form seemed to brighten with something that might have been relief or joy. "Then, it is done. The gates are yours. Guard them with love." As the ancient beings began their mournful work of collecting the hegemony dead, the human fleet spread out through the complex, taking up positions around each gate. They were no longer an attack force or a rescue mission. They were the new guardians of Kithara, and their watch had begun. 6 months later, Captain Valdres Corrin stood on the observation deck of HFY Station, watching the steady stream of ships passing through the gates under human protection. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a joint construction project between human architects and HFY artists that combined functionality with beauty in ways that took the breath away. "Captain," came a familiar voice, and Valdres turned to see Admiral Holloway approaching. He looked older, worn by the weight of his new responsibilities, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. "Admiral, how are the negotiations with the Altarian Consortium going?" "Better than expected. They're actually grateful for the new security arrangements. Piracy in the outer sectors has dropped by 70% since we established the Guardian fleet." Holloway joined her at the observation window, watching a massive Centaurian cargo hauler lumber through the third gate. "Hard to believe it's only been 6 months. Valdres nodded, her fingers unconsciously tracing the new insignia on her uniform sleeve, the symbol of the Guardian fleet, a stylized gate surrounded by stars. She'd been offered a promotion, a position as one of the senior administrators of the new organization. To her own surprise, she'd accepted. "Any regrets?" Holloway asked, as if reading her thoughts, "about giving up the merchant life?" "No." Valdres smiled. "I spent years moving cargo from system to system, but I never really understood what I was carrying until I almost lost the ability to carry it. Freedom," Holloway said simply. "Freedom," she agreed. The memorial wall in the station's central hub now bore the names of every human who had died in the Battle of HFY. 42,921 names, etched in black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Below the human names, in crystalline script that caught and refracted the station's lighting, were the names of the hegemony dead. The HFY had insisted on that both sides be remembered, that the tragedy of the hegemony's fall be honored, alongside the sacrifice of the humans who had stopped them. It was a painful reminder that even necessary victories came with costs that could never be fully calculated. "The Relentless Dawn is ready for her shakedown cruise," Holloway mentioned. Casually, Chief Cern outdid himself with the repairs. Valdres smiled. Her old ship had been more than repaired, she'd been rebuilt from the keel up, incorporating both human engineering and HFY artistic sensibilities. She was still a merchant vessel at heart, but now she carried the authority of the Guardian fleet and the responsibility that came with it. "Who's her captain going to be?" Valdres asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Someone with experience handling difficult situations. Someone who understands that sometimes the most important cargo isn't what's in your hold, but what you're willing to fight for." Holloway's smile was knowing, interested in the job. Before Valdres could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Both officers immediately moved to the nearest command console, their casual conversation forgotten. "Report," Holloway commanded. "Admiral," came the voice of Station Commander Torres. "We've got multiple contacts emerging from the 7th gate. Unknown configuration, but they're broadcasting distress signals." Valdres felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when the hegemony had first appeared. "How many ships?" 17 vessels, various sizes. "They appear to be refugees, sir, running from something." Holloway and Valdres exchanged glances. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's victory over the hegemony had created ripples that were still spreading through the outer sectors. Some species saw the change as an opportunity. Others viewed it as a threat. "What are they running from?" Holloway asked. "Unknown, sir, but Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting pursuit. Massive fleet, heading for the 7th gate. ETA approximately 6 hours. Valdres felt the familiar weight of decision settling on her shoulders. Another crisis, another choice between safety and principle. The easy decision would be to close the 7th gate, to protect the complex by denying passage to whatever was pursuing the refugees. But that wasn't what Guardians did. Open the gates. "Ma'am," Commander Torres' voice was concerned, "if we allow passage to hostile forces, then we deal with them." Holloway interrupted. "That's why we're here. That's what it means to be Guardians." The next few hours were controlled chaos, as 17 alien vessels limped through the 7th gate, their hulls scarred by weapons fire and their crews exhausted from whatever ordeal they'd endured. The refugees were from a dozen different species, united only by their desperation and their need for sanctuary. "Admiral," came the report from the medical teams. "Preliminary examinations show evidence of exotic weapons exposure. whatever attacked them. It wasn't conventional warfare. Valdris felt eyes forming in her stomach. Exotic weapons? Like the hegemony's reality killer, different energy signatures, but similar principles. These people were attacked by something that can manipulate matter at the quantum level. The implications were staggering. The hegemony hadn't been unique. There were other species in the galaxy with access to weapons that could erase ships from existence. The victory at HFY hadn't ended the threat. It had only revealed how much larger that threat actually was. Incoming fleet is approaching the 7th gate, Torres reported. There, Admiral, you need to see this. The main display showed the approaching fleet, and Valdris felt her breath catch. The ships were wrong somehow, their geometry twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space like wounds in reality itself, trailing distortions. That made sensors scream warnings about impossible readings. What are they? Holloway asked. Before anyone could answer, the lead ship broadcast a message in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Guardians of the gates, surrender the fugitives. They carry plague. We pursue for cleansing. Plague? Valdris studied the refugee ships, their crews still being processed by medical teams. What kind of plague? Unknown, sir. Medical hasn't found any biological contamination. The pursuing fleet reached the 7th gate and stopped, their twisted ships holding position just outside the complex's defensive perimeter. They didn't attack, didn't threaten, they simply waited, as if confident that the Guardians would see reason and surrender the refugees. Admiral, one of the refugee representatives requested permission to speak. A tall, ethereal being whose species Valdris didn't recognize. The devourers speak of plague, but they lie. The plague they fear is knowledge. What kind of knowledge? The knowledge that there are alternatives to their way. That species need not choose between domination and extinction. The being's voice carried depths of sadness that reminded Valdris of the HFY. We are survivors of worlds they have cleansed. We carry the memory of civilizations they have erased. Understanding dawned on Valdris like a physical blow. The plague wasn't biological, it was cultural. The refugees carried the dangerous knowledge that resistance was possible, that the devourers weren't invincible. They were living proof that there were alternatives to submission. They want to erase you because you refuse to give up. She said quietly, yes, and now they demand that you, as guardians, surrender us to preserve the stability of their order. Admiral Holloway stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of his office and the weight of human history. Tell the devourers that the gates are under new management. Tell them that these refugees are under our protection, and tell them that if they want to cleanse anyone, they'll have to go through us first. The refugee representative's form seemed to brighten. You would fight them for us? We didn't become guardians to pick and choose who deserves freedom, Valdris said. We became guardians to ensure that everyone gets it. As the human fleet prepared for another impossible battle, Valdris felt the familiar weight of decision. They had won against the hegemony through determination, sacrifice, and the simple human refusal to accept defeat. Now they faced an enemy that could twist reality itself, beings that had apparently made a practice of erasing entire civilizations. The odds were impossible. The enemy was unknown. The cost would be measured in thousands of lives. But looking out at the refugee ships, at the beings who had carried hope across the galaxy to find sanctuary at humanity's gates, Valdris knew there was really no choice at all. All ships, Admiral Holloway's voice rang out across the fleet channels, prepare for combat. The gates are under our protection, and so are the people who come through them. That's non-negotiable. In the distance, the Devourer fleet began to advance, their reality-twisting hulls cutting through space like knives through silk. But between them and the refugees stood the Guardian fleet, bearing Earth's banner and carrying humanity's promise that some things were worth fighting for. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with threats that could erase matter from existence, and beings that viewed entire civilizations as expendable. But it also contained something else now, a species that had learned to fight not just for survival, but for principle. As the second battle of HFY began, Valdris smiled grimly. They trapped one human ship and learned what happened when you cornered someone who refused to stay cornered. Now they were about to learn what happened when you threatened someone under human protection.